everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Tonya and I am also the self-care maven and founder of Freedom at the Crossroads blog and this channel right here, where I talk about all things Black women self-care, lifestyle, travel as well, and empowerment for Black women. Now, it's been a moment since my last video, a lot going on, and I promised in a number of my couple videos back where I said I was going to share some shifts and turns in my current journey. For those of you who don't know, yes, I do work in healthcare. I still work in healthcare, and I am also a women's self-care and health coach for Black women over 40. Now that's important to keep in mind because that's what this channel is dedicated to, although every woman is welcome to this channel because it's all about empowering women to live their best, healthiest life without living on the altar of other people's expectations. In other words, get rid of that superwoman cape. Throw that away, burn it, whatever you need to do to leave that behind in pursuit of your total whole self unapologetically. Today, I wanted to talk about self-care in the context of personal safety. And I say that because for those of you who are not living under a rock, and I speak specifically to Black women and other marginalized women, it has been a season of chaos. This year, particularly this summer, there's been a lot going on with the murder of, the hate crime murder of a Black woman in her home. Things are just beginning to feel escalated. And so I thought it was necessary to talk about self-care for Black women and self-care in the context of safety and security. Now, I always talk about self-care being a holistic thing where all aspects of you interact and intersect. And that means whether it's fitness, whether it's mental health, whether it's spiritual health, relational, environmental, all of these things play a part when it comes to your wellness, your health, the totality that is you. For years and years and years and centuries, I talk about this all the time, where women have been conditioned and arguably brainwashed into putting their health and well-being at the bottom of the list relative to other people. And when I talk about self-care for Black women in the context of safety, personal safety and security, I'm talking about physical and mental and spiritual and emotional security. Now, throughout your seasons, throughout life, there are times when certain areas of that totality of personal safety and security, where it shifts, right? Nothing is ever constant all the time. The only constant we have on this earth is that time is passing, right? Time is the only constant. And when it comes to living your life, you know how life just be lifing, right? You go to work, you have your obligations and what have you. You try to make sure that you have as aligned or balanced in sync life as possible outside of whatever else is going on. Now, given the current toxicity that is the US of A, and actually the rest of the world, but I'm speaking specifically to Black women in North America, things have become increasingly unsafe for us as a collective. Things have become increasingly toxic and detrimental to our mental and physical well-being. Having said that, what do you do? I know that I had shared some videos back that I was making some changes, I was making some shifts, and part of that has to do with having a plan B, C, and D. We know historically, Black people as a collective, especially Black women, have been the canary in the coal mines in terms of what's going on within society, within culture, whether that's politically or or from a social justice perspective. There's a lot going on. And if you are plugged in, you too are aware of, other people getting their plan B, C, and D. And what do I mean by that? Let's get practical and let's get factual. Regardless of what your economics are, you need to have basic plans in place in the event that things go sideways. I don't want to scare any of my sisters out there, but let's keep it real. We know what's going on, not just in the US of A, but if you follow global news and things of that nature, you know what's going on, or you have some inkling of social and political and economic unrest, in an era where we are more and more connected globally. What happens in one part of the world has a ripple effect in other parts of the world. We know that there is a genocide going on in Congo, still one going on in Palestine. And then we have political unrest in West Africa and things of that nature, as well as East Africa. Things are happening. And so the question then becomes, well, if all of this is happening, how do we stay safe? How do we protect ourselves in a time when things are very fluid, in a time when things are more unsafe for women as a whole? It starts with you. I hate to say this because it sounds so cliche. It starts up here. And it starts up here because it's one of the hardest things to align, because all of your plans, all of your strategies, they start up here. And this is why when I speak of health, self-care, real self-care, I say that self-care starts up here, not what you see in social media with people going, trying to spend money or taking themselves out on a date and all of that. Oh, that's very well and good. It's nice to treat yourself, to take yourself out, to change up things in your daily habits, to make yourself feel good. That's a good thing. But that is not a strategy and plan for things long term. So I haven't really delved in and dived in. I've alluded to it, other aspects of self-care, and I talk about financial self-care as well, because I'm also on that journey myself. I was privileged to be part of a program to help get Black women doing what they need to do to secure their financial freedom and safety. So that is a good thing, but that is not my wheelhouse. My wheelhouse is specifically self-care and strategies, adaptive self-care strategies for Black women when it comes to your physical, mental well-being. Those are my wheelhouses, and there are plenty of, I can, right off the top of my head, I can speak to Black women who are doing the thing and really encouraging and really educating Black women regarding ways and plans to secure themselves financially, etc. So that's not what I'm talking about today. What I'm talking about today, I'm literally talking about A, B, and C on the ground, why it's important that when it comes that you really hone in, and this season that we're in now, especially as we are fast tracking to elections here in the US, presidential elections, things are going to get a lot more toxic. Things are already getting more toxic. They're getting more unsafe physically, not to speak of the mental health component of that. And so that's why I said, you know what? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about self-care, practical strategies, things we can do as Black women, as the average Black woman who may not be privileged to have a plan in place that includes shifting your geographical location. So what do you do? What can you do to ensure your safety and security? One, I would advise starts with your physical health, believe it or not, because if you're not physically healthy, you're not going to have the wherewithal, energy, and all of that to pivot and make quick changes when it comes to your personal safety and security and that of your loved ones. So that's why being fit as much as possible, being healthy as much as possible, this is the time you need to be focusing in on your health and wellness, your physical health and wellness. That includes, what are you putting into your body? Are you getting sufficient sleep? If you're not getting sufficient sleep, what things can you do to improve your quality of the sleep that you actually do get? All of this ties into when you're talking about strategies and plans in place for things if they go sideways. What are you doing to secure yourself financially? Did you add to your plan? Well, how do I get more income coming into the house in the event that, say for instance, there's a job cut and things of that nature? So you want to, as much as possible, increase your streams of income. Sometimes the only available pathway is perhaps picking up a part-time job, at least in the interim, so that you can have sufficient finances built up savings-wise, so that you have a financial cushion in the event that things become tough economically. Those are things we need to be addressing. Those are things you need to be adding to your toolkit and your plans for whatever happens going forward. And it's, say for instance, it's just all of us getting paranoid and, this hula baloo just fizzles out and, it's, the status quo continues, things are relatively stable in the country and no political unrest here in the US of A. And you can go about your everyday average Jane, average Joe business, right? Even to that, it's always good to have a cushion. According to statistics out there, you can Google it, you can look it up. You don't need me to give you hardcore facts on that when you can look it up yourself. The average American is a paycheck away from financial catastrophe. A couple years ago, that was me. And a lot of other women in my circle, life has been lifing. People have had personal tragedies with the state of healthcare in this country. You can have a catastrophic illness. It's very easy to end up in bankruptcy and things of that nature, where your finances are precarious. That's just the nature of living here in the US if you're not privileged to be, say, making a six-figure income. So there's that. So when it comes to bringing it on back, these are all things that you need to factor into your plan B, C, and D in the event that things go sideways. Part of my strategy, for me, part of my plan B, C, and D is, because I have the wherewithal to do that, is to be able to, I have a plan in place for geographic relocation if things come to that. I have that privilege because of where part of my family comes from, and I have citizenship in more than one country. So that's not necessarily true for a lot of the average Americans and for the average Black person, especially when you consider that majority of Americans do not have a passport. Let me repeat that. Majority of Americans do not have a passport. And that is true in 2024. You can Google it, look it up. As a matter of fact, let's just do that right here. For those of you who are watching in the future, I'm just tapping into my Google right here. And I'm gonna pull that up right now. And my question is, what percentage of Americans have a passport in and I'm just typing that 2024, and let's see. Yeah, only 48% of Americans have a passport in 2024. And I would argue to say, well, let me not even argue. The percentage of Black women that have a passport in America in 2024. Let's do that. Of Black women. Let's see. Okay, here we go. What percentage of Black people? Actually, okay. The percentage of Black people that have a passport in 2024 is 34%. Hispanic Americans, 55%. And it's saying something to the order of 42%, and that's the most recent that's from August of 2023. That's the reported statistics. Let's see here. Yeah. American women. Let's see. Yeah, 34%. So that's disturbing. So let's just say things went, worst case scenario, things went sideways. We had January 6th happen all over again, but have it nationwide. Do you see where I'm going with this? So with that in mind, my advice is to make sure you have a passport, because in this day and age, whether you have the financial capacity to relocate to another country or not, you should have a passport, because for the simple reason that the US passport is a very strong passport. Even now, although it did drop a couple points, I believe Japan is somewhere around number 1 in terms of passport rankings. The US has dropped down to, it's still on the top 10. So it's probably somewhere in the middle. But you can't get into any country surrounding, let alone crossing an ocean, without a passport. And that should be part of your self-care strategy. And that's when I say self-care strategy, I'm speaking of the larger self-care strategy with the added dimension, and I'm just looking at the dimension of personal safety and security. And I really, 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 really emphasize the need for every Black woman, as much as possible, to have a passport in 2024. Regardless, have a passport. I've, counseled co-workers and other women of a similar, Black women of a similar mind. You should not be walking around in the US or any other place on the planet, wherever you are, as a Black woman. I know being able to even pay the processing fees of obtaining a passport in 2024 can be daunting, depending on where you are in the world. And as a Black woman, and I'm talking about the global collective of Black women, especially those who are in places that are unsafe because of conflict and violence. I know that's an issue. But if you are those situations notwithstanding, if you are a Black woman who has the resources now in 2024 to get a passport wherever you are, whether you're in South Africa, whether wherever you are on the continent of the home continent of Africa, whether you're in the Caribbean, somewhere, wherever you are globally, if you've been able to, if you have the financial wherewithal, the resources, get a passport so that you have better control of your personal safety and security, and that of your child or children, family members. There is no reason your self-care strategies and toolkit in 2024, there's no reason why you should not have that as a component of your self-care toolkit and your safety plan. And I know there was a time when people would talk about, disaster awareness and disaster training, and have a go bag and this and that. I don't know if people know what a go bag is, but that's really just your emergency bag where you've got important documents, money, first aid kit, change of clothing, emergency rations that can carry you for at least a couple of days. In the event that something catastrophic happens in the country. I remember I am not a Gen Zer, I'm Gen X. And so I still remember when my parents used to talk about disaster training that involved things like not just earthquake, but also like a bomb getting dropped and things like that in the country, some other, going to war, or being attacked, the US being attacked by some foreign or hostile entity and stuff like that. So I still remember that. So we live in a time where it's not sci-fi anymore. These are actual probabilities and possibilities of things that could go wrong wherever we are on the globe. And we all know knowing the history of Black people in this part of the world, in North America, in the Caribbean, we all know. And additionally, we know as Black people, as a collective, anti-racism is global, anti-Blackness is global. And I'll never forget the video feeds from Africans in Ukraine and stuff like that, and what they went through in other, during the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine, how they were treated, how they were kicked off of trains, mothers, pregnant women. So we know how they were marginalized, how they were mistreated. Nobody was talking about that in mainstream media. We were only talking about it on social media because why? They weren't, of a, particular hue. And that's why their stories didn't get amplified. Similar reasons why other stories are not getting, genocides are not getting amplified in mainstream media regarding what's going on in Africa, particularly in Congo. And, some other places as well. It's, the list is ongoing. But the point of the matter is, knowing history as we do, and even if you don't know your history here in the Americas and globally, as a Black person, especially as a Black woman, those that are the most vulnerable in times of conflict, fluidity, unrest, or whatever you want to call it, the population that gets impacted the most and will be the first to feel the pain and the violence. It's our people. It's our women. And so knowing that, if you're not already in the process or you don't think it's necessary, I'm here to tell you, if you want peace of mind as much as possible, relative peace of mind, relative ease, your mental health and all of that in, protective mode, or, in its aligned and balanced and healthy way of thinking and moving right now, you will start putting plans in place. And so that's what I'm doing. And I'm here to tell you, you need to do the same. Now, whether you choose to implement that for yourself, that's entirely up to you. But as a self-care maven, someone who also works in healthcare and collaborating and, connecting with other Black people and Black women across the globe, these are the things that we are talking about as a collective here in 2024. All you have to do is go on, check out other YouTube channels, Black women traveling, and you will be hearing the echoes of the same thing. You need to get a passport. That needs to be part of your personal safety and security packet when it comes to self-care, because that is an aspect of your self-care. If you're not healthy, if you're not safe, there's no way you can implement the other components and aspects of self-care. You can't do any of that if you're not in a safe place. You can't take care of your mental health or your spiritual health if you're in a place of conflict and chaos. That's just not going to happen. And so when it comes to overall self-care and what's going on moment to moment in this present time, you need to focus, you need to be able, that's the whole point of, that's why I speak of adaptive self-care strategies. This is why I speak on that when it comes to self-care, and this is why I make the distinction between what I call self-care and what social media out there on Instagram and TikTok is calling self-care. Mine is somewhat radical and adaptive, and it has to be because I grew up in places where there was socio-political unrest, rioting, coups. I know what that feels like. I know the fear. Till this, at my big age, I still remember the fear and horror and uncertainty of feeling unsafe in the midst of gunfire, tear gas, screaming, bull horns, all of that. And that's for another video. I'll talk, maybe I'll talk about that at some later date. But all of those things have prepared me thus far. So I do have a go bag. Hold on just a second. Hold on right now. I'm gonna stop the camera and grab my go bag so you guys can see what that looks like. And this is, I stopped the camera for a little bit to grab hold of my go bag, and this is mine. And no, I didn't spend $200 or $280 on one of those, hunter or military gear go bags, because to me, that's impractical as a woman, carrying that much gear and you trying to move, situationally. No, it's not. As a woman, you want to be able to move with as much ease and as quickly as possible. So I have all of my essentials in there: laptop, money, basic meds, change of clothing, change of underwear, things that matter to women that you need for a couple of days, at least to get you through a week. I've got in my go bag. And this is good to have even in the event that, say for instance, nothing, national crazy happens, there's no political unrest and people rioting in streets, and there's none of that. No January 6ing in the streets of, the US of A. But say for instance, you had something like, a flood, tornado, earthquake, fire. It's good to have an emergency, and this is really essentially an emergency preparedness bag, but this is one that allows you to be mobile. Hence, go bag. A lot of, military and paramilitary people and all those survivalists talk about, oh, you gotta have a go bag and all of that. Well, this is my female version of the go bag. And for women, we keep it practical, succinct, and necessary. We are planners. We women are planners. Let's lean into that. We Black women are some of the best planners and strategizers. So I don't know if that's even a word, strategizer, but you get my drift. So you need to have something like that. Also, additionally, I have my passport, and I spent, I think it was an extra $40, somewhere between $30 and $50 to have not just the passport, but passport card. Why? Because while they're both documents, I don't mind if push comes to shove. Say for instance, I lose my passport card, but I still have my passport. Passport costs a lot more money to replace. It's far more delicate, and it's more, to me, it's more important. Whereas a passport card, if people are asking for identification in an emergency situation, national emergency situation, you can always whip out the passport card without endangering your passport, because your passport is going to allow you to change geographical locations. And so that's why, if you're able, I would also advise you to get not just your passport, but a passport card, so that your passport, you keep it far more secure and less accessible, even in your go bag, than your passport card. Your passport card doubles as any kind of ID. It's just like your state ID in terms of sizing and all of that. So, but it has the same power as a passport, but it's more compact and everything is digitalized and all of that. However, my point is, if you lose one, you still have the other, which still grants you access and exit, which is key. And that's why I said, if you're able, if you have the resources, get both, not just the passport. In this day and age, I believe in going a little bit overboard. It's better to be over prepared than under prepared. And that's just my advice. It gives me more peace of mind, and it gives me more clarity in terms of how to move and shift in a, say for instance, chaotic or emergency situation. It's just a little extra to your toolkit. Also, have your first aid kit. You don't need to spend $50, $60, $100 for a first aid kit. And I recommend first aid kits. You should know what you need as an individual versus what you might need, say, if you have a family with, you say, for instance, you're a family of 4 or 5 and you've got children under a certain age. You should know what the basic needs of your children are. I don't say your partner or whatever, because that person is an adult and should have their own go bag for themselves as an individual. There's no coddling of adults in my head when it comes to self-care or any other aspect of that, because children always get a pass with me because, one, they're children, they're minors. Parents need to parent and do what is necessary to ensure that their children have what they need in the event of an emergency situation, regardless of what that looks like: flood, fire, what have you. All those kind of things. You as a parent, it's your responsibility, regardless of how responsible or irresponsible you feel your kid is or you expect your child to be. You as a parent, if you have children, if you have guardianship over minors, it is your responsibility to ensure that they have everything they need for their own safety and security. That means go bags, all of that, emergency bags for each child, each minor in that household. It is not your responsibility to do the same for your partner. It would be nice if you did it, but it's not a necessity. Every adult in that household needs to have their own emergency preparedness bag, kit, whatever you want to call it. If you're a single woman, you should know what you need as an individual, what you need for your household. Same thing if you have pets and things of that nature. You need to have those emergency preparedness kits in place for them as well. Now, if you're new to this channel, hello, hit the follow button and notification so that you know when the next video drops. But I want to emphasize yet again, this is not your everyday, this is not your social media self-care channel. This is not your social media lifestyle channel. This is a radical, adaptive self-care and lifestyle channel that empowers Black women over 40 to live their best life. And in order to do that, you need to get off the altar of other people's expectations. And that means holistic self-care where you incorporate all aspects of you, your health, your wellness, your security, your environment, your finances. All of those things are components of your self-care. Self-care is not just about eating right and getting exercise or getting sufficient sleep. It's also doing those things that help you rest, have peace in your life. And that means what? That means financial security. That means environmental security. That means physical safety and security. All of these things play into self-care. And that's what a lot of social media does not tell you about. They try to make it a pretty picture and fun things and spa days, when the average woman is looking for real stuff. And that's what happens here on this channel. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And going forward, I'll be talking more about these things specifically and what you should have in your, when it comes to having your plan A, B, and C, for whatever, because we know that lives and things come up. I like to talk about things related to personal safety. When it comes to personal safety, also want to have self-defense in there too. People are crazy out there, ladies. There are a lot of men out there who are losing their minds. The patriarchy is kicking and screaming as it crumbles, and reactions to that is the upswing in violence against women globally. So many women are being even more terrorized, harassed, stalked, murdered. DV, as those numbers just keep going up as patriarchy continues to spiral in its death throes. So yeah, we have to do what's necessary. So when it comes to self-care, those are things you need to consider. And I know for those of us, those of us who love to travel and those who have the privilege of moving to another geographical place in the interest of, more safety and a softer existence, or an existence of more ease and less toxic, we in some instances can be living in a mythical world where, oh, things are so safe and I can do this and I can do that. But at the end of the day, I need us to remember, regardless of where you are in the world, regardless of where you're privileged to be or move to in the interest of safety and security as a Black woman, the reality of it is there is no utopia. There is no safety utopia for women and girls. It does not exist, especially for Black women. So even though you might be in an environment that is, contextually safer than a previous location, just keep in mind that vigilance is the name of the game, but balance as well. And one of the ways you balance that is making sure, one, your health is as good as it can possibly be, your optimum health, level of health and fitness, that you also are vigilant in terms of being aware of your environment and where you are, not totally relaxing your guard, not being naive, and brushing up on self-defense. You just never know when you'll need it. And so, having said that, this is Tonya, the Self-Care Maven, helping Black women everywhere over 40 look better, feel better, without the pressure of other people's expectations. Till next time, please hit and follow this channel. Follow me on my other social connections. And till next time, bye.